Alright, so in this video we're going to create a very simple web page that just allows users to choose a file from their device, to select that file, and then to upload the file. So you're going to go to Firebase storage, and then Firebase is going to display that image on the web page. So very simple app, not too much to it. Obviously, if you're going to create this, you'd probably want to do other things other than just this, but we're just going to focus today on the logic of uploading and displaying an image from Firebase storage and the JavaScript associated with that, because my students have been asking questions about that particular topic. So we're just going to do a quick demo of that. So I've got an image.html new web page up here. And once I've gotten a document saved as HTML, I can use the exclamation mark and autocomplete to just set up a new boilerplate. And I'm just going to call this image upload or something like that in the title. All right, and then we're ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is actually connect to a Firebase account and a Firebase storage. So assuming that you have Firebase, if you don't, there's plenty online for you to create a Firebase account and to learn a little bit about how to set up on Firebase. But this doesn't have anything yet. This is just my account. I'm just going to go to the console here of my Firebase account, and I don't have any project set up yet. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is create a project, and I'm just going to call this image and continue. I don't need Google Analytics, and I'm just going to create my project. And once that's ready, I can just press continue. And then I'm going to add the app to my Firebase project. So I'm just going to again call this image and register the app, and then I'm good to go. So coming out of that for now, if I go to the build section, this is where it all happens. All these different things I can do in Firebase. Today I'm focusing on storage because I'm wanting to store images. So once I'm in the storage area, I'm going to press get started, and I can start in test mode today. If I was doing this properly, I might be in production mode and control the rules and the security rules for accessing the storage bucket. But for today, we'll just keep it nice and simple and start in test mode. And I press next. And I'm going to pick an area nice and close to where I am. And I think Australia is the closest to me. So I'll press done. And then I have Firebase storage. That is all set up. And so now that that's set up, I can come to the wheel or cog up here for my project settings and click on project settings. And if I scroll down from there, then here's all the information I need about my particular Firebase project. So this is my config object that I will use later to connect my HTML web page to my particular Firebase app. But to start off with, I'm actually going to come to the CDN part here because I want to just tell my HTML that I am connecting to Firebase, these Firebase libraries that they've already got all this code there for us. A lot of the work is done for us with Firebase. So I'm going to copy that URL in the CDN, nice sort of lazy-ish way to do it. And I'm going to put that in the head of my document here. So it's a script tag because I'm looking at existing JavaScript from Firebase. I'm going to say type equals module here. Notice that I'm still inside my opening script tag. I haven't closed the bracket yet. And I'm going to put src, or in other words, the source of my script. And then I'm just going to paste that URL, which is connecting to that Firebase library. So that's saying, yes, I want to use Firebase for this project. And then I'm actually going to copy all of this again, because it's not just the Firebase app library that I want. Which is what I started with. I'm going to delete the app bit here, and I'm going to say that I want to connect to the Firebase storage library as well. Because for this particular web page where I'm storing images in Firebase, I want the Firebase app to be connected, but I also want to use Firebase storage. So I'm putting these two scripts inside the head of my document, and then I'm ready to go. Now, all this code, by the way, is linked in the description. You can have it there, you can use it. It's not going to work straight away. You're obviously going to need to connect it to your Firebase project. I'd encourage you to watch the video, code along with me, so that you can learn what the code is actually doing and learn how the code actually works. But the code is all there for you if you need it. This is a starting point for doing other things with images in Firebase and whatever it is you want your web app to do. But for this one, let's keep it really nice and simple. We'll just make a little div. And this div to start with is just going to be communicating with the user that this is the part of the web page where you upload your image file. So to start with, we're just going to give the div an ID. We'll call it image uploader or something like that. We need to give this an ID so that we can communicate to the JavaScript later on. We can just say, yep, these are the elements that we're talking about from our HTML that we want to do something with, put some functionality to with our JavaScript later on in the code. For now, we'll give it an ID, and then I'm just going to put an input element in here so that the user can actually upload their file. So the input is not text input. The type of input that we're talking about is a file input. But again, so that we can communicate with our JavaScript later on, we'll give this an ID. So I'm just going to call this one file input because that's what it is. Now I'm just going to add one more thing here, and that is accept. And so what this is going to do is it's going to show the user only the files that we want to show them when they go and try to select a file from their device. So it's actually not going to prevent them technically from uploading a different type of file, but it is going to only show them image files if I type image here with a /. I'm just going to put an asterisk here, basically to say that they can they'll be able to see any type of image file, but it'll just restrict what they see when they're trying to upload files. So that kind of reduces the amount of errors that can happen. It just stops the user from potentially thinking that they can select files other than image files when they try to upload something. And then once they've selected a file, we also want a button in here so that when they click this button, it'll actually upload that image to Firebase storage. That's the idea. So we'll just say something like upload image in here. Now again, in this button, we want to give it an ID. Let's call it the upload button because that's what it is. We want to be too wild and crazy with our names here. We just want something that makes sense. That's the most important thing. We want the code to make sense. So that's about all we need for our button. So that's going to allow them to upload an image. It's pretty much all we need for that div. Very basic HTML here, not doing much with the HTML. But let's also have an image tag here so that we can actually show the image that has been uploaded to Firebase storage. So this bit here, we're allowing the user to upload it to Firebase storage, but this bit here, we're actually getting the image from Firebase and displaying it on the web page. So again, IDs are important because we need to talk to our JavaScript later on and say these are the elements that we're talking about when we write the logic of our code. But also, I want to say that there's a source of this image. The image has to come from somewhere. So we need to get this image from Firebase. So I can't name this image yet. I can't tell the HTML what the name of the image is yet because that hasn't been determined yet. So I'm just going to leave that blank. The source of the image, we don't quite know it yet. So let's leave that as empty quote marks and we'll come back to that later. I guess we should also do an alternative text here. I'll just call this image preview. Okay, so that's basically it for our HTML. That's not the main part of what we're trying to do today. The main thing that we're trying to do is the JavaScript, my favorite. So we've got these script tags up here where we're connecting to these Firebase libraries, but this script here, this is where we're actually writing our own code. But again, we're going to say type equals module, because what I'm wanting to do is actually import certain functions that have already been written for us from Firebase. So it is really important that we have type equals module up there for our scripts. And then let's import a couple of things from those Firebase libraries that we've already sort of established, already connected to. So I'm going to import some stuff from Firebase. Right? Import things from Firebase libraries. So starting off with, I'm going to grab this Firebase library that I've already connected to at the top of my document. And that's the Firebase app. So I need to be able to initialize my app. So there's a function already created, initialize app. That's a function in Firebase that allows us just to connect to the Firebase app. So I'm going to say import some more things, but this time not from the Firebase app, but from the Firebase storage library. So I'm going to paste that URL here, Firebase storage, and from there, let's put semicolons on because we are behaving. We're going to import various things from the Firebase storage library. Firstly, get storage, which allows us to connect to our particular storage bucket in the first place. We want the reference, because we want to have a reference for where we're putting things in Firebase storage and where we're getting things from. We need to be able to upload. So this one's called upload bytes because we're at the byte level of looking at the file and uploading the file into Firebase storage. And then I want to be able to get the download URL, which is going to be really important for having a link that we can connect to say, yep, this is the particular link in Firebase storage that I want to actually bring into my web page, or that I want to create in Firebase storage in the first place when I upload my file. So these functions that already exist in Firebase are really important to import from these libraries. And once that's done, then we can get started. So first thing, let's actually connect to our Firebase project and our Firebase app. So coming back to my project settings up here, I was on the CDN before, but I want this config object. This config object is really important because that is what's going to allow the HTML web page to connect not just to Firebase generally, but to my specific Firebase app, my specific Firebase project and app within that project. So I'm going to paste all that in here. Please don't copy this, it won't work for you. This is my Firebase account, not yours, so it won't work for you. Obviously the code that I've put on GitHub doesn't have this. You'll need to put your Firebase config object into this part of your code. Alright, so now that that's there, I'm going to make a variable here called app, and in that I'm just going to use my initialize app function that I got from Firebase up here to initialize what exactly? Well, my Firebase app. Not anyone else's, my one. So that Firebase config variable contains the information for my app, so that's what I put in here. And now I'm storing all of that in this app variable because when I create my next variable, which is storage, because I'm using Firebase storage today, that's what this is about, storage, I'm going to use the get storage function. So looking at that storage bucket that's in my Firebase project, and what's the Firebase storage that I'm talking about? I'm talking about the one that's in my particular Firebase app with my particular Firebase config. That is the information that allows me to connect to it. So that's me set up now. I've now connected my Firebase project and app to my HTML document. So now I can actually write some actual functions, or an actual function to control the logic of uploading and displaying this image file. So I'm going to make a function, but it's an asynchronous function because I want to wait for that image to be uploaded, and I want it to still work and still run, even though that's not something that might happen immediately, that upload process. So I'm going to create a function, an async function, and I'm just going to call this upload image. And just like any other function in JavaScript, I got these curly brackets. That's where I can put parameters. I won't put any in there today. And then the fancy brackets, and of course, inside those fancy brackets, that's where the code is actually written for my function. So the first thing I'm going to do with this is just make a variable called file input. And inside that variable, I'm going to actually grab an element from my HTML, that element being the input element where the user uploaded the image. So let's say document, because I'm talking about my HTML document, dot get element by ID, and then I called it file input, I think, didn't I? File input, that's the element that I'm getting from my HTML. Notice the spelling, it's got a capital I. You must spell this correctly. If you don't spell it precisely the same way as in the ID, then the computer's going to get confused. So make sure that what you're grabbing from the HTML is actually what you're grabbing, and it's spelled exactly the same way. And I'm storing that inside a variable with the exact same name, file input, so that I can use that now. I'm going to create another variable called file this time. And this is going to use my file input variable that I just created which is about that input element, and I'm going to get the files that are uploaded, but hopefully they're only uploading one. So I'm just going to index it here and say it's that first file that they upload. That's what I'm talking about when I say file. I'm talking about the image file that the user has uploaded through that file input element from my HTML. Okay, so assuming that they have uploaded a file, I want to check that that's the case, that that's true. So I'm going to say if, and then the condition for my if statement that has to be true is just file. So what that means is if file means that if there is a file there, if it's true that the condition is met, that there is actually a file that's been uploaded, then I will run some code. So what's the code that I run if they've uploaded a file? Well, I want to store this file in my Firebase storage. So I'm going to make a variable here called storage ref, because I want to make a reference to where that file is being stored within my Firebase storage bucket. So to do that, I'm going to use the ref method, reference method that I imported earlier from the Firebase storage library. And in brackets, I'm just going to refer to, firstly, storage. Okay, so that's my storage bucket from my particular Firebase app that I made the variable for earlier. And then I'm going to actually name the reference for where I want that file to be stored. So I'm going to use backticks here because this is what's called template literal. So I want to actually put a variable in here, and so using logic like that, this is not a quote, this is not speech marks, right? This is a backtick, and this allows me to actually use a bit more logic or JavaScript inside that space. So I'm going to firstly name the folder. I'm just going to call it uploaded images. You can call this what you want, but that's the name of the folder that I'm going to put my files in. So uploaded images /, and then because I've got that backtick thing going on, I can now use the $ and fancy brackets, and in there I can actually put a variable. And that variable, I'm just going to say file.name. So this time it's going to be basically whatever the name is of the image file that I uploaded. That's what it's going to be referred to in my Firebase storage bucket, but within this folder called uploaded images. Okay, so I've done that. So I need to put another backtick in here to sort of finish that off. So it's within those backticks so that I can have the variable as part of the name of what I'm trying to reference to when I'm putting it in my Firebase storage bucket. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's why the backticks. Just make sure that these are backticks when you do it, not speech marks, quote marks. Okay, so that being done, the reference being set up, I'm now going to use the await keyword because I want to wait for this image to be uploaded before I move on to the next thing. It might take a little while for the image to be uploaded, so that's why I need the await keyword there. And I'm going to get the upload happening, I'm going to use this upload bytes function that I imported earlier from Firebase. So upload bytes, and what am I wanting to upload? Well, let's use that storage ref that I talked about, that I've just made the variable for. So I've made this variable, so let's use it now. Storage ref, and then I'm uploading the file. So this is what I'm uploading, and I'm using the storage ref to determine where to put it and what to call it once it's uploaded. So that's kind of that for uploading the image. So the next step, of course, is I actually want to display this image on my web page. So I'm going to start by making a variable here called the image URL, because I'm going to want to get a URL, or kind of like a link to where that image is stored in my Firebase storage inside my app. So again, I need to use the await keyword because I want to get the download URL. And I need to wait for it to get that from Firebase before I move on and do anything else. So this get download URL function, again, I imported this earlier from the Firebase storage library there. But I need to get that URL from the place where I stored it. So that's why I'm going to pass in the storage ref variable, which I made earlier, which is about where and what I called it and where I put it in my Firebase storage. So Then I'm going to make another variable, and this variable here is going to be grabbing the image preview image element from my HTML. So remember I made that before. That's where I want the image to display in my HTML. So I'm just going to call it image preview, which is what I named the ID of the element. And in there I'm going to say document, talking about my HTML document, dot get the element by its ID, and I named it the same thing, so image preview. Again, being careful with that capital letter there, being careful that it's spelled exactly the same so that the computer knows exactly which elements to get from my HTML. Okay, so now that I've got a variable for my image preview, the image preview element, which is that image element in my HTML, remember it didn't have a source, so I've got this idea that I want to display an image, but I haven't said where I want to get that image from. Well, now I can say the image.src, the image source, is going to equal this image URL that I've just fetched from my Firebase storage. So this is the logic here for getting that URL from the particular place that I want to get it from. And now I can use that URL to say, yeah, that's the source that I want for the image that I'm going to put in my HTML preview image element. Okay, great. So that's basically it for that function. Of course, it's not going to work just yet because when I click the button, nothing is going to happen. Let me just come to my, I haven't loaded it yet. Let me actually test out that any of it's looking the way it's supposed to be looking. Right, it looks a bit of a mess at the moment, but I've got the choose file where I can choose the file, I can pick the file. But right now, even though it's going to allow me to choose that file, if I click upload image, nothing's going to happen. There won't even be an error in the console here because basically there's just no logic there. When I click the button, I haven't said that I want anything to happen. So that's what I need to do now. I need to put an event listener in for what happens when I click that button. So firstly, let's make a variable for the button. I'll call it upload button because I don't want to be too creative with the names. Again, I want the names to make sense. And this upload button is going to be, it's an element from my document. So for my HTML document, I'm going to get that element by its ID. And again, in the ID, I'll just double check it. It's always good to double check. I called it upload image. So let's get, and again, I spelled it with a capital I, camel casing it there. So get the element by ID, upload image, that's now stored in my upload button variable. Right, so once I've got that variable, I can then use that variable, upload button, to say, yeah, with that button, I want to add an event listener. So I'm waiting for that button to have an event associated with it. And in this case, the event is someone clicking on that button. And if the button is clicked on, what do I want to happen? Well, I want this upload image function to be called and to run. So let's just say upload image, and it knows what I'm talking about. It goes, oh, okay, I want that function to be happening when I click the upload button. All right, so let's test it out. Save that, come back to my browser here, refresh it. So now, hopefully, if I select a file here and then press the upload image button, it'll actually upload that image to Firebase storage. And yikes, that's huge. It'll show me, there's our little cute silky ginger chicken. But as cute as she is, it's a little bit too big there. So it's working, the logic's working, the function's working. That's the main thing I care about. But it doesn't look great. We can fix it up a little bit with some CSS. So just coming back to the head of my document here, I'll just put a style tag in, and we will just do some simple CSS just to make sure it's working, functioning in a way that's semi-reasonable. Firstly, just the body of the whole document. Let's just put that in the center, text line center. We may as well do a background color as well. Let's do bisque, because why not? But then I want to get to the actual, the image preview image here. That's where the image is being displayed. So let's get to, that's an ID, image preview. So if it's an ID, I'm going to use the hashtag symbol, hashtag image preview. Again, has to be spelled the same way. And then for that, let's just give it a width of, let's say 300 pixels, for example. And let's give it a height of the same. Now, that's not perfect. It might be squashing it, or changing the aspect ratio. It's not perfect, but that'll do for now. So much more CSS I could be putting in, but this is not a CSS tutorial, so we'll leave it at that for now. Now, if I were to choose a file, let's pick Sephi this time with the other white silky chicken. It's uploading that to Firebase storage. It's developing a reference location for it. It's finding a URL for that, and it's downloading that URL and putting it in the variable, and then displaying that image as a source for my image preview element here in my HTML. Looks kind of awful, but you can play around with the CSS and get that working. Obviously, this is a starting point for all sorts of things that you might want to do with getting images loading and displaying on your web page from Firebase storage, and being able to let users upload image files to those Firebase storage buckets that you might have on your app. So hopefully that works for you. The code is all there as a GitHub in my description. So please go crazy, have some fun, try different things, and see what you can do with this as a starting point for your own apps that you're developing. Good luck, have fun.